Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective. What is going on, everybody? My name is Justin Fensterman, and welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by FantasyGuru.com. They say the early bird gets the worm, and yours truly with you because I am so pumped and excited. I'm filling in for Ray Flowers still. He'll be back next week. But for yours truly here, as I've been in the last few days previewing different positions, hit the running backs, hit the wide receivers and tight ends. Quarterbacks, going to be focusing on a hell of a lot of quarterbacks tomorrow. But for today, it's kind of the part 2 of my auction series here. If you go back to Fantasy Sports Daily's episode 449, I kind of give an introduction to fantasy football auctions, or also known as salary cap drafts for those that are playing on some of those free sites. That's where if you want to be in a fantasy football auction, labeled as salary cap. So that is where you'll find the ability to be able to make your league into a fantasy football auction. Well, today is going to be part 2 of that. Kind of joking around yesterday, being like, last week was finite math, which yours truly knows a lot about. Now, for all you smarties out there, AP Calc style, going to go into auctions, dive deeper. And when you're in auction, going to go over different auction strategies. So it's going to be great. The real big piece of news for the NFL is, we were talking about the Bengals releasing Zach Moss. Well, now we'll have to see, because according to reports, they could be adding Noah Fant. Any updates that come aboard, we'll let you know. But I can't forget about how fun of a day it is for all of you baseball fans out there, especially all you Mariners fans out there. You talk about a team that has been scoring runs. If you look at the AL and you look at some of the runs leaders when it comes to teams, most of them sit in that AL East. But then you look at the AL West, you see how deadly this Mariners team is already. Now they get Eugenio Suarez, adding that big bat to their mix, and that's going to make them even deadlier. Other teams wheeling and dealing as we speak. We know that when it comes to the Boston Red Sox, they trade for Steven Matz. Their division mate ends up the Toronto Blue Jays. They get Shane Bieber. We'll have to see if he's able to stay healthy and whatnot. So that's going to be interesting. They're adding arms. They're absolutely going for it. It's going to be a major dogfight. You see teams like the Orioles selling off some pieces. You see other teams like the Chicago White Sox kind of waiting it out, asking for a little bit more regarding Lewis Robert. We'll see if any team is going to bite regarding Lewis Robert. But the Eugenio Suarez move, absolutely great for Seattle. That lineup is going to be very, very difficult to get beyond until you get to that bottom of the order. Every half inning for the opposition is going to be like an eternity with Eugenio Suarez. For Mets fans out there, shoring up their bullpen, getting Tyler Rogers helping themselves out there, then Ryan Helsley too. And that's something that is interesting, because instead of going after your big arms, and the Mets have had their pitching issues, health and just lack of ability and lack of consistency throughout the year. They were good at the start. Now you're starting to see them get hurt a little bit more. I don't want to say the wheels are falling off, but you're seeing some of the vulnerability that the starting pitchers now and how they're impacting the Mets games. Shoring up that bullpen with who they've already gotten Gregory Soto. They get Helsley, they get Rogers, and hopefully signing Rogers to an extension after that. That is a very threatening bullpen, arguably a top bullpen in baseball, and that will help them out. That will help bridge that gap in case their starting pitching fails them a little bit. Still time before the trade deadline expires here. We're going to see if someone like a Stephen Kwan is dealt. Cleveland already making it with that. It'll be interesting to see if they end up trading Stephen Kwan, because the asking price for him is a lot. We'll have to see if any team bites. Mason Miller going to the Padres. Same with JP Sears, too. Both of them going there from the Athletics. And at this point, you got to be thinking, and now other reports I'm seeing is that the Padres aren't necessarily done. They could be dealing some pitching by the end of the day, too. San Diego has been in the thick of it over the last few days. So you got to expect that they're going to be making at least one more move before the trade deadline passes. So some of the deals that were made, but it's always a fun time. And we're going to be talking about these teams at fantasyguru.com, especially from the betting angle moving forward and DFS angle, how these moves impact, especially some of the bats changing teams, how they impact the rest of their starting lineup there. So we'll let you know if any other deals fall into place. But let's talk about what we are here to talk about today for the most part. Not the MLB trade deadline, even though it is very important and a lot of fun and some names being tossed around that could make things a little bit more explosive prior to the 6 p.m. Eastern deadline. It's fantasy football auctions. Now, with auctions, and you have my strategy piece, Ray Flowers' strategy piece, you have our targets and fades list for auctions. The reason why I love auctions so much is because it goes to a different path than what you see. Not an extremely different, some players may, but it's less than what you're seeing on draft boards now. When you're on a snake draft, when you're looking at those draft boards, there's a lot of similarity with what you see. But in auctions, it's a lot more loose. How much players go for, the timing of it all, when you nominate a player you want versus just getting money off the board. And that's where I come in with the in-auction strategies. And I want to preface this by saying there's not really a lot of analytics or crazy stats that goes into this conversation we're going to have. This is just teaching all of you about the auction experience, and it's teaching you certain awareness factors that you can have while being in the auction so that you can have a successful auction, because it's different kind of atmosphere than a snake draft. And I love them. And yeah, they take a little bit more time, but if it were up to me, every single league that I would be in would be a fantasy football auction. I want the ability to be able to get who I want. And that's the big thing that you have to remember with these auctions. You have to get who you want. And it's easy to say, but then when you're in the thick of it, you could be waiting and waiting and waiting. Why? Spend the extra few dollars. Use what you see when it comes to, even in snake drafts, average draft position, dollar valuation, anything you see, use it as a range, not necessarily the law. Range it. Because as we're going to talk about, and when I say we, you and me, because if you have questions about fantasy football auctions, please, I'm telling you, they're not as threatening as you think. The biggest thing with fantasy football auctions is that virtual auctions, in person, you don't even have to worry about this one thing. But in a virtual fantasy football auction, the one thing you have to worry about is your league mates staying in the auction room, or at least being logged in to the auction room at all times. Because especially early on, that impacts the auction and that player. There's no pre-ranking. There's no way around it. That's the one thing. And it might turn a few of you off, and I get it. I'm not saying that if you tell me, Fensty, I hate auctions, I'm a snake draft person. Okay, I'm not going to poo-poo you. I'm not. The bottom line is any one of us at fantasyguru.com or in this industry, we all have the same goal. We want you to play. We want all of us to play. We want all of us to enjoy. That's why Best Ball exists. It exists because there is a multitude of our audience and you out there that just loves the drafting aspect of fantasy football rather than the season-long management and everything like that. You like to draft. That's where Best Ball comes in. And that's why at the end of the day, no matter what you play, we just want you playing. I'd be a hypocrite if I said, I'm never in any snake drafts. No, I play in about 8 leagues. And I'm telling you right now, 6, if not 7 of those 8 leagues are going to be snake drafts. One of them's a guillotine. That's going to be snake. The others are going to be all snake drafts. If I was so anti-snake draft, I wouldn't be in those kind of leagues. Why be stuck at a draft position? Seriously, why? Play in an auction. Player values change. There are ways around it. And I have them outlined somewhat here, but even more in detail at fantasyguru.com. And that's where we have all of our content, and that's how you can get involved. And I know that I sometimes sounds like a salesman. Here goes Fensty again, pumping the site. Well, I am, because you know what? It's made me a better fantasy football player. And yeah, I get it. I'm biased. I work for the site, but I've been working with Jeff Mans the engineer of our content, I've been working with Jeff Mans for over a decade at this point, even before I started working at fantasyguru.com. So I know the way Jeff plays. And by the way, as part of our content release for our ongoing draft guide that's going to stick with you for the season, the Manifesto is out. You're on the train, you're going to work, you want your reading material, put down the book, read the Manifesto. Jeff Mans gives his entire blueprint, his draft plan, his ideal draft plan, his targets per round with where he's seeing it going, and he's updating it too. Because he knows, just like we all know, that average draft position data and all that changes, and it can change drastically for a handful of players between now and even 2-3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. It's out. And it's got everything you need. It takes you inside the brain of him. And that's why I'm very pumped to be talking about the content release. I have content that's out too. I have nothing to hide. Some of you might be in auctions with me. Go read it, please. I don't hide anything from you. There are a bunch of different ways you can execute an auction and get a good team. But for those that are first-time players or for those that have been unwilling to play, let me help you and take you through a fantasy football auction. And if you are interested in this, you can hit me up in our Discord at Fensty, Fensty. We have a multitude of Discord channels on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, at Fensty Sports, Fensty Sports, on Instagram if that's your thing. I'm also on TikTok too. And let's talk some auctions. Let's talk some auction strategy. If you're unfamiliar, let's get familiar. That's what it's for. And that's what the content is there for. I give a strategy piece on in-auction strategy. Some of them I'm going to outline today. The rest you could go and read. And by the way, when you sign up at fantasyguru.com, you get access to, depending on what package you could sign up for. Because if you were only a wagerer, you just want betting with our betting Discord channel, boom, you could get a separate package. DFS, separate package. Season long, separate package. Or you bundle them all up together and you get access to everything. Site live streams, all of our articles, Jeff Mans' cash game breakdown, his Manifesto that just came out that we know you all love every year when he writes that out. Access to everything Discord, all the bets, all the season-long content, all the DFS content, everything. Become part of the Elite Mafia today. Because again, this is part of it right here. Outlining how to get through these fantasy football auctions. I've gone on a couple of shows and people are telling me and saying, well, auctions are becoming a lot more popular now over the last few years, or they're becoming a thing. No, they've been a thing. They've been a thing. I want to say I changed my home league from a snake to an auction. I want to say 10 years ago, 9 years ago. I think the whole concept is brilliant. I remember that. I got, in one of my first auctions, I got Antonio Brown, who, I mean, we all know what Antonio Brown is now, but when Antonio Brown was in his prime in Pittsburgh, I believe it was Antonio Brown, I got him for $33 or something like that. $33. And top-end receivers normally go, you spending on Jamar Chase, you're spending probably 60 plus on Jamar Chase. That's what he's going to go for. Ideally, you'd like to spend 55, 60, but you know top-of-the-line talent's going to go for that much. And there's a very, very small tier of players that'll go for beyond $60 in a $200 budget auction. But that's where you can find your value. There are plenty of ways to get good value in fantasy football auctions. The Antonio Brown thing was that I bring up was because that he was known. He wasn't the top of the line just yet, but he was rising. But he went for where the second tier wide receivers go, the third tier wide receivers go for, that 20 to 33 range. And you might think it's a lot of money. You might think spending $60 of your $200 is crazy on one player. It's not. It's how you're supposed to do it. It's how you're supposed to go after the players you want. You take a stand. You're investing in a business. That's what you're doing. You think of each player as a bunch of businesses. You have money. You're given capital. So now there's nothing you can do except spending it at this particular time at the business fair. You want to invest in certain businesses, and you want to put some big investments in there. So that's why, again, you want the more detailed approach here. I'm going over some of it now. FantasyGuru.com is where you get that. Let's talk about how you're going to dominate your auctions now, because I'm feeling great. I love this topic. It's fantasy football rules, and this are probably my two favorite topics to talk about in fantasy football, actually, because there's a lot that can be argued. There's more than one way to do things, room for interpretations. But for me, I've executed this strategy even with some of my friends, some of the analysts that you know that work at fantasyguru.com that have been in auctions with me. They've seen it. They've seen it. They've absolutely seen it. You don't think Phil Backert works for the site? Phil Backert? You don't think, I mean, I wrote my strategies, how I handle in auction. He's been in my auction now in my home league for probably, I want to say, I don't know, 5-6 years at this point. You don't think he knows my tendencies at this point? You learn a lot after you do a few of these auctions with the people, especially the same group of people. So let's talk about this, because now this is specifically, I'm going to talk about player value ranges and everything, just so you can get some kind of insight regarding how much players are going for and how much you're to spend on these players. So let me just bring this up very quickly. Top of the end talent, guys like Jamar Chase and guys like Bijan Robinson, maybe even Saquon Barkley still, maybe Justin Jefferson. Those four players may cost you $60+ with Bijan and Jamar Chase, especially Chase, going for close to $70. Some of you have asked me before, Fensty, is there such a thing as too much to spend on a player? There is. There isn't. And again, it depends on the budget that you have. The majority of auctions have a $200 cap. And with that, for me, if I'm all of a sudden finding myself in a late 70s battle, meaning it's going up between now $75 and $80 for a Jamar Chase or a Bijan Robinson, that's getting a little frisky with the budget, because you want to at least be able to get another couple of guys too. It's harder to execute some of these strategies in fantasy baseball auctions because you have more positions to fill. So because there's more positions to fill, you got to be able to divide up your budget a little bit more. But there are ways you can get around it in fantasy football. For instance, most of the money is going to be spent on running backs and wide receivers. And when I'm talking most of the money top end, you're only going to have, when you have tight ends, maybe 3 guys, maybe just, I don't know, Bowers, obviously, Trey McBride, George Kittle. Those 3 guys, to me, are the only 3 guys that you're going to be spending $20+ on, or even need to. I don't see Sam Laporta or Hawkinson reaching that range, because I think that when it comes to both of them, not like I wouldn't spend 12 to 15 on those guys. I think that's where your drop-off is. But that's the example right there. Unless you really are gung-ho, and again, if you are, go after Brock Bowers. You're probably going to be spending $30. And if you are going to be spending on Brock Bowers, and this goes right in line with what you're seeing here on this sheet, if you have the first few nominations, because as I talked about last week, you're not put in a draft pick order like in the snake, you're put in a nomination order, player that you're putting up for nomination. And it doesn't snake or anything like that. It goes 1 through 12, 1 through 12. That's how it goes. So there's strategy in that too. And for player nominations, if let's say you're in a 12-team league in an auction, if you have those first few bids, throw out someone that you're into. Don't be too obvious with raise, because then if I'm watching you, I know that you want that player. But instead, throw out the player and then gently bid on the player and see if you can get that player for a few dollars off. Again, I don't have a psychology degree, okay? So I guess my wife does. So I guess by marriage, I have a psychology degree. But my thing is, this is all from experience. This doesn't happen in every auction, but in a lot of auctions, and I'm talking auctions with veteran auction players in it, I see what I call hesitation spending. Those first few bids, I'm telling you, people hesitate. They don't want to be the first. It's like being in class and the professor goes, okay, the teacher goes, okay, presentation time, who's going first? Now, in the back, no one wants to go first. People kind of want to be reactionary instead of being proactive about things. But here's the funny thing, because some teachers would make it obvious, others would not say it, but would still show it at the end of the year. You'd get some extra credit if you go first. I was all about extra credit. I wanted to go first, and you get it done with, and then you watch the rest of the class sweat it out after that. You set the bar, good or bad. There's no comp to you. So you, at this point, rather than being someone that goes, you know what? Let's see how much Bijan goes for, and then let's see if Saquon Barkley comes up next, and then I'll go after Barkley. I want to set the barometer. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because if you have those first few bids, throw out someone you want and go after the player. Because here's what happens. If let's just say Bijan Robinson, who in most auctions, 12-team, half PPR, for those that are just no premiums, 3 wide receivers starting, that's kind of what, and in the article, by the way, it's labeled in both mine and Ray's content that's kind of the standard bearer there. Those are the particulars. Those are the goalposts when talking auction strategy and going over players and whatnot. But when it comes to those first few players, if let's say Bijan Robinson goes for $53, it's going to set off a high alert in your auction. Jamar Chase comes up, $53. What a value. People start overspending from reacting. You could be ahead of the game. And again, it doesn't always work, but generally, if you have the first 3 bids, I've noticed that maybe you could get a player for a little bit cheaper. People like to wait. Again, you be the first person to give the presentation. You'll get the extra credit. Here, you could get extra credit in form of a few dollars off. I'm not talking $10, $12. I'm not. I'm talking, though, $3 to $5, let's just say, or even $5 to $8 on some of these guys. That will mean a lot in the middle of your auctions, because all of a sudden you're going to reach a point where it's going to be hard to spend, and you're going to have people that are going to be at your level financially, dollar amount wise, and there's a lot of strategy that goes into this. But saying all this, beyond having one of the first 2 or 3 bids, meaning 2 or 3 players to put up for nomination, and this is in every round, by the way. This is just beginning of the auction. You have the first nomination, you have the second nomination. It's not 100% foolproof, but I've seen it happen a lot, and I've utilized that strategy, and I've been able to save a few bucks and piss a few of my league mates off in the process, getting them to overspend. Because early on, you want to get the money spending. And the way you get your money spending is by nominating big names. Get that money off the board, make people spend, or make people wait. Something that there's some kind of strategy. And I used to be one of these people. Just going to save my budget, wait 45 minutes, an hour, then I start spending. No. Then you become a target, because then they know that you're not spending. So at some point, you're going to have to get players. You're going to overspend, and people are going to bid you up because they know that now the market for you has changed. While you might hold the hammer and have the most amount of money, if you have a few league mates with a high max bid and they're interesting tier 3 players that are going out, tier 2 players that are still on the board, then your league mates are going to bid you up and make you pay. So you want to kind of stay under the radar like that. And there are some people in professional leagues that I see still do that. And to me, I did that for the first year or 2, and then I never did it again. It doesn't work. It took me out of a top end running back tier, which I want to be in, because big thing with me, and we'll talk about spending in a second, but I want to make sure I have cornerstones on my team. I do. So you want to get league mates to spend. So if you know, and again, tight end is a great example for this, even quarterback too. If you know that you have a few quarterbacks that you're comfortable with that aren't Brock Bowers, McBride, George Kittle, start nominating them. You don't want to go after them? Nominate them. And by the way, for those that critique auctions by saying it's too much extra time, for a Brock Bowers, you know he's not going for under $10. You know he's not going for under $15. He's a top-end guy at his position. So start the bidding process at $10 instead of going 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. That's how you save time. Having players ready to nominate instead of taking 30 seconds to nominate a player. Have a player in your queue ready to nominate and put that player up. That saves time. If your league mates are all with it, that saves some time. And also with some of these players, if someone starts Brock Bowers at $1, raise the bid to $10, $12 because you know that Brock Bowers isn't going. In a lot of your auctions, most of your auctions, you are spending $30. This guy is Gronk now. That's how a lot of people are going to view Brock Bowers that want to go all in on him. And that's a $30 to $35 price tag in some leagues. Maybe you get Brock Bowers for 30 flat, but that's the asking price. And that's why for me, I'll probably look another direction. Even if I can on a Kittle or even a McBride, save a few dollars because at that point, you know McBride is going to get the volume, might not get in the end zone a lot, hasn't been able to, but you know he's going to get that target volume. He's had over 100 targets the last couple of years. So you know at least you're getting volume there, even if you're not getting those touchdowns. Or you wait it out because there are a lot of players at the tight end position that go for $10 or less. And that's how you balance your budget, knowing that going in. Not every tight end is going to be going for 15 plus, not your top, even your top 5. Your top 3 will. But beyond that, that's when the drop happens. So if you have guys in that range, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, let's just say, maybe you want Evan Engram way later. You want Evan Engram, and you're going to be able to spend the $5 to $7 on him that it's probably going to cost towards the end. If that is who you want, and you plan on targeting guys in that tier, then you start nominating those tight ends and make sure people are spending, and they will spend. Same can go with quarterbacks too. Because we talk about really wanting to be in that elite tier, but let's say you don't want Joe Burrow. Because with Joe Burrow, I mean, he's not as much of a runner as the other guys that are being drafted in his range. Then put Joe Burrow up there and nominate him and try to get people to spend. Also, and this goes without saying, but knowing who players that you're playing with, who league mates like, is also very important too. I'm not saying it's the way. Some people are very good at not playing with their hearts. Because to me, if you can't play fantasy sports and take the fandom of the team that you rooted for growing up or you still root for out of the mix, then you shouldn't be investing money into playing fantasy football. When I was producing on Fantasy Sports Radio, there was a big-time Patriots fan. Big Patriots fan. Didn't miss a snap. It reacted from every single snap. Worked on the Fantasy Sports channel, produced fantasy sports shows, worked with fantasy analysts every single day. Didn't play in fantasy football leagues. Again, wasn't able to separate it. You got to separate it. You telling me, well, I'm a Jets fan and thus I'm not drafting any Patriots. I'm not drafting any Dolphins. That's stupid. That's stupid. Okay? That's not why you play fantasy sports. But you can work that to your advantage. I used to be in an auction league with a bunch of Philadelphia fans, even people that were analysts, but still had a little soft spot for those Eagles. I was able to bid them up. Knowing who your league likes and not talking and not being the person that's leading the damn chat the entire time. In an auction especially, don't focus on the chat. Someone reacts to your bidding. Whoa, you overpaid. Let them sit with that. Don't react to them. Don't feed them. Even if they ask you, well, how does it feel? Focus on the auction, not the chat. Harder to do when you're in person, but virtually, yeah. If you're doing the virtual service and you're just doing the actual chat, not saying you're not on video, but if you're not on video, then yeah. Just stay in the auction. Don't worry about the chat so much. And don't worry about what other people think regarding spending and overspending. Because here's the thing. You got to spend all your money, number one. And number two, like I said, you got to go after the players that you want. You want to go after Jamar Chase. You want to go after Bijan Robinson. You want to go after them both. I'm telling you, that's probably going to cost you in the neighborhood of about $130 of your $200 just for those two alone. You can make do. You can absolutely make do. Go target Travis Kelce. Go target Mark Andrews. Go target Jake Ferguson. Boom, you're saving money on tight end that you're going to be starting just about every week. You have Travis Kelce. At quarterback, okay, maybe you don't get Hurts and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Maybe you don't get any of those top-end guys, but okay, you go down the list a bit, and someone who I've talked about on this stream a bunch, who I love, Caleb Williams. I think you could get Caleb Williams for single digits. And I love Caleb Williams this year. I do. Get him for single digits. That saves money. While others are, spending maybe 30 on Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You're getting your guy for 8. That's how you balance that budget. That's why it's important, especially early on, to spend what you want. So that's really what it comes down to. And you have to spend on who you want. And it's easy to say, but when you're in the mix, there's a lot of hesitation. You can't doubt yourself. For me, and I think this is where, by the way, Ray Flowers and I disagree. I am somebody that for major targets, I want Bijan, I want Chase, I want Neighbors. For those guys that are going in for snake drafts, the first 2 rounds, especially, even the first 3 rounds, I normally, before the auction, write out a list of about 12 to 15 players going in all draft and auction ranges that I want. And I put their name and I put +3, +4. I used to do +5, even for those major targets. You spend $3 more than what you're seeing. Who cares for a major target? You spend $5 more than what you're seeing on average on the sites for Bijan Robinson. Who cares? You got to get the players you want, and you can make up for it later on. I mean, look at this list right here. Bo Nix, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields. These are just a few players that I actually don't mind that I'm looking at. Travis Etienne. Who's carrying the football in Jacksonville? Do we necessarily know? No. But for that, you don't have to spend much at all for the running backs. And I'm talking a few dollars, and that's it. That's it. RJ Harvey, a hell of a lot of protection. You want to go after the Broncos running backs? Well, the Broncos running backs are going to be cheap. Bo Nix is going to be on the cheaper side too. I think Bo Nix goes for $8 to $10 in auctions. And again, you're just joining me, $200 budget, 1 quarterback, no super flex, no tight end premium, 1 flex, 3 wide receivers starting. You can very easily get 3 $40 guys or on average and be okay. Because there's so many players, those low-end wide receiver 2s on teams, the wide receiver 3s. And wide receiver 3s, I talked about this with Tyler Beaker before. You're seeing more formations that include 3 wide receivers over the last number of years. So those guys who are going for just a couple of bucks have value. Have value. They absolutely do. And Kyle gets it. Kyle's hanging out with me here too. I see him in the chat here. He's saying, I feel running back 2 is easiest position to fill at a value and work the waiver wire throughout the year. Yes, it is. You can very easily do that. But also, Kyle, when talking about auctions specifically, you're going to see a major drop-off at the position. And in all these positions, there is a drop. It's just a matter of where it is. You can easily spend on someone like Bijan Robinson, and let's say you're spending $70 on him. But then you want to go after another target I like, James Conner. Okay, maybe you spend $25 on James Conner. That's totally fine. You're still, at the end of the day, investing less than $100, $25 for James Conner. Nice mid-draft target. You're running back 2 at that point, and you could go extreme and spend on running backs. But you don't necessarily have to get full value out of the position. There's a drop-off. These rookies, we'll have to see Caleb Johnson into him. Caleb Johnson, someone who I think can go for $12 to $15. We know what kind of offense they run in Pittsburgh. We're expecting big things. I'm expecting big things. I love him. And this is a guy that, to me, could he be 3 down back? I think there's a big chance. Whether it's right at the start or part of the way through the season, big chance there. $12 to $15 is nothing. You could get them both. And yeah, don't try to justify it to yourself at the same time, and I'm not talking to you, Kyle, I was just saying that you brought up the running back 2 conversation, which I appreciate. And for you and all of you for watching too. Always love hanging out with you guys. But I'm not telling you to just start punting top-end talent because of who you can get later on. I'm just telling you, you can have it all. You could get the later on value, and you could go after top-end talent and still have the ability to put together a good team. A good team. You're not getting Jamar Chase and Bijan Robinson in snake drafts. No chance. Not happening. All right? This format, you have a chance. And you might think, okay, Fensty, but it happens more often than you think. More often. And who cares how your league mates react? It's your team. There are a lot of players. And yeah, even those secondary running backs too. Your handcuffs, some of them are going to go for more money, but a lot of those guys too, they're only going to cost you a few dollars. So for those that are unsure about handcuffing, it's not going to be that expensive for the most part to handcuff. So you'll be able to do that. And that's why, and I'm glad that we're talking about this, because something else that you see right there, the importance of keeping a good max bid at the end of your auction. And that's big here. You don't necessarily want to be down to just dollar days with 5 positions to fill. You have no leverage at that point. Some of your favorite sleepers, some of your favorite guys that you're taking flyers on at the end. For me, Jaden Higgins. Love him out of Houston. But I know that for me to get Higgins, I'm going to have more than $1. I'm not going to be able to just bring him up and no one's going to bid on him. So when I'm at the end, meaning that when I'm seeing most of my league in that $8 to $10 range, or even most of the league was single digits at that point, you have to be aware of your max bid. I like to make sure at that point I have a $3 to $4 max bid, because if there's someone that I love that has not gone on the board yet, rather than nominating for $1 and that's it, and boom, you get raised, you're done, maybe start that at $2, scare somebody off. Let's say you have the $4 max bid, you start the nomination at $2, and maybe it backs people off. They hesitate towards the end because they're down to dollar days too. Then you still have your max bid. I want to keep at minimum that $2 max bid, or at least a $3 max bid, for as long as I can. Eventually you reach a point where you got 3 or 4 spots to fill. If you're down to just $4 for 4 spots, that's one thing. But even with 4 spots, I'd like to have a $2 max bid. That way, I can just nominate someone for $2 and maybe scare some people off. Every dollar matters. And unless there's a rule in your league that says you can carry over whatever remaining auction budget you have to your waiver budget, something like that, you got to spend all your money. It doesn't impress me one bit when I see, oh, Fensty, I put this team together and I've got $16 on the table. Well, to me, that says that you missed something. That's way too much. You got to spend in these leagues. And you can't wait to spend. You can't. You got to stay ahead of the game. Now, let's talk about bidding strategies, because there's a lot when it comes to that. I've mentioned a few of it, but now I'll just put it out there like this. The rest of your league has cleared the way. You and your league mate are battling for, let's just say, I don't want to keep using Bijan Robinson. Say you and your league mate are battling for Marvin Harrison. Let's just say, okay, that's a good example, right? Marvin Harrison, you're raising the bid $1 and then $1 and then $1. Well, switch it up. You want Marvin Harrison, instead of just keep going $1. If it hasn't reached your limit yet and it's not completely destroying your team, raise $2. Whoa. I'm telling you, not every time, but then you have people react and stop. Whoa, they didn't just raise $1. They're expecting you to send the bid back $1. Take them out of rhythm. Take them out of mental process. I'm telling you, there's something there. There's hesitation. And that's when people freeze. That's when people wait. That's when people get cold feet. Another thing you could do, because often in virtual auctions, when you bid up someone or you put another $1 on that bid, then what can happen is, or what will happen is, the time to bid on the player goes from whatever it is back up to 10 seconds. There's some people that think they're being smart by just waiting all the way down to 5, 4, 3, 2, bid right at the last second, go up $1. People are thinking, and some people think that it's good strategy because it's making their opposition in a one-on-one bidding battle sweating it out a little bit. But here's the thing. You want the player and they haven't reached your limit that you're legacy, you're still in a comfortable price range to bid on. Harrison, you're hanging in there. It's now at 26, 27, let's just say. At that point, let's say that the person you're bidding against is waiting all 10 seconds and you've been kind of deciding to and taking your time, taking a deep breath and waiting. Well, if you know you want to go up, when they wait till the last second to bid you up $1, boom, send it back. Bid them up $1, send it right back immediately. Put that pressure right back on your league mate. Send it back immediately. Okay, because that right there, change of pace, just like in a basketball game. Why do you probably think I'm like a psycho right now? But I'm telling you, this works. It works. You gotta make people uncomfortable when you're doing this, especially virtually too. It's very easy when you're look at someone dead in the eye as you're bid battling against them. There's really not a lot of that, though, when it comes to how most auctions are executed, which is virtually in these virtual auction rooms. But those are strategies right there that you can implore to be able to throw off your league mates in a bidding battle. Are they 100% foolproof? No. But changing the pace of the bidding back and forth and changing the dollar amount, instead of going up $1, go up $2. That makes a difference. It will get inside your league mate's head that you're bidding on. Also, by the way, something else that I've noticed, and again, none of this is measured professionally by, any kind of doctor or anything like that. This is just me right here and all the experience that I've had. I've noticed that there's hesitation with starting a new decade. Marvin Harrison, our big example right now. Marvin Harrison, he's sitting there at $29. I notice that there's hesitation. Who's going to be the one to start the new decade, to turn the page? Well, if there's going to be that hesitation and you're seeing that in your auction, take advantage of the nines. Take advantage of the nines. You're willing to spend $29 to $33 on Marvin Harrison. Let's just say you love him. You think he's going to be great. Take a step up and whatnot. Pay off in snake drafts, that third round price tag. You think that he's going to pay off value. Here comes the bid. 24, 25, 26, 27. Well, you know what? Get to the 9. 29. Even if you're still in range and you spend a third dollar on that raise instead of 2, there will be some intimidation there for that league mate. They got a big decision. Do they really want to spend in the 30s, or do they want to be able to mentally tell themselves that they got a value because they got Harrison in the 20s instead of the 30s? But really, the difference is just $1. But they don't like seeing that. There's something about that works when it comes to fantasy football auctions and in bidding battle. Doesn't always work. These are just different strategies. And I have to see, because sometimes when I'm nominating players against my league mates here, they know to get on me, and I got to change it up a little bit too. That's why if I'm putting out players that I don't want the whole time, well, they're going to know that I'm just trying to get money off the board. At some point, put out a player that I want, let the bidding happen, and then I start going in. When bidding and when putting a player up for nomination that you want, you don't want to be so obvious. You don't want to be an eager beaver. You want to be able to play it cool. Just like play it cool. You don't want to be all over and all on top, because then your league mates will flag you down and they'll know you want that player. So they're going to make you spend, especially if it's early on. Sometimes when you put the player up for nomination, wait a little bit. Let's go back towards the top of the board. Let's say it's Justin Jefferson. Wait, you put Justin Jefferson up, let's say for $20, because again, the critiques about auctions, it's too much extra time. Well, here's a way that you can actually save time. Instead of putting Justin Jefferson up for $1, and then about a couple of minutes later, here we go. The bidding's now up to 20 finally. Start him at 20. But again, that's how you save time when it comes down to this. But spending, you got to be able to be willing to spend on the players that you want. And taking advantage of the nines, let's just say, is very important. And that's something that I've noticed that there's hesitation starting the next decade, where there really shouldn't be. Because at the end of the day, there's no true top-end value. There are going to be players that will be overpaid for in some auctions, and in others, someone's going to get a nice $5. There's always one or two players that piss people off because of what they go for. So many years, I'll say, in auctions, it's been like Keenan Allen, where people are expecting him to go for $28, for $22, but he ends up going for 15. There's always a couple of players that end up like that. And that's what makes auctions very interesting. That's what makes them interesting. But there's a strategy, and there's a way to balance your budget, and there's a way to still get the players that you want. But you want Justin Jefferson? Yeah, put him out there for $20, but then wait a little bit and then go back to him when he hits 40 plus. That way you're not being such an eager beaver. You're blending in with the rest of your league mates who are still bidding on Justin Jefferson, and then you strike. You let the field clear just a little bit, and then you strike. And sometimes there are players, by the way, there are auction players that just keep pushing the bid button. Don't do that, because if your computer, phone, or whatever has some kind of delay on it, you can end up double tapping it, and now you've re-upped the raise, and maybe it's at a dollar amount that you really don't want it to be at this point here. So here, Kyle's asking me about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kyle, by the way, in a $200 budget is going for $63. Even in leagues where you've got 8 of 12 being Detroit Lions fans, I just don't see him going for that high. Can I see in a Detroit-friendly league him going for that 55 range? Maybe. But, okay, in your hypothetical, though, he goes for $63. You see London at 46.48. Yeah, I mean, look, it depends on when you're on the auction, when you're, how much money you have. But if you get Amon-Ra St. Brown, let's just say, instead of 63, let's say you get him for 53 even. We'll put him on top end, 53. He's going to go for lower than that, I feel like, in a lot of leagues. I don't want to say way lower, but if you could save $7, that's pretty significant. To me, he's going to go in the 40s, the mid to late 40s. And then you see London sitting there. So let's just say you spent $50 on Amon-Ra St. Brown. You see London sitting there now in the bidding. Even the next player, you see him now at 43, 44, a big-time red zone target. You want to go after him? Go after him. Do it. Go after him. Now at this point, you've got 2 strong wide receivers. Let's say you're starting 2 wide receivers. Well, your requirement is now done. You're good there. You don't even need to check boxes, but you've got 2 top-end receivers, and you've spent, let's say, 50, 46. You've spent less than $100. Okay, now you can go after somebody else, whether it is a Brock Bowers if you want to go that way. Probably if I do that, wouldn't be going after Bowers, but you could still go for for a Jalen Hurts maybe, or a top-end running back that hasn't come out. Let's say Barkley hasn't come out. You can then go after Barkley. You can. Yeah, you'll have to be watching your spending the rest of the day, but Barkley, London, Amon-Ra, pretty good to me, and that's doable. And it happens regularly. Stars and Scrubs builds work in DFS. They also work in season-long leagues too. Want to thank all of you for hanging out with me today. Tomorrow, I'm going to be back on once again. I'm going to be talking quarterbacks. Russell Clay is going to stop by as I finish off the filling in and position previews here, but Fantasy Football Auctions got a lot of content regarding auctions with more to come at fantasyguru.com. You can give me a follow at Fensty Sports, FENSTY Sports on X and Instagram, and find me at fantasyguru.com and in our Discord at Fensty, FENSTY. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, same channel, noon Eastern, Fantasy Sports Daily, right here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by fantasyguru.com.